Hello everyone, and welcome back to another remote sensing lecture video. And in this lecture video, I want to start talking about data transformations. Data transformations. And sort of to recap, way back in the beginning lectures of this series, when we talked about data transformations, we said that these actually do change the pixel values, right? They change the pixel values. Or put another way, they actually create new data, right? And so, again, to contrast this with the visual enhancements that we talked about last time, right, where the visual enhancements basically controlled, what wavelength regions or what bands coming from the image controlled those red, green, and blue diodes. We could trick the computer into visualizing the data differently. We could also use, again, that contrast stretching, which mapped pixel values to display values. Right, so you could make a pixel look brighter or look darker based on the contrast stretching. You could change the color that we saw based on band assignment. But at the end of the day, you weren't actually changing the underlying pixel value. Okay, so hopefully up to this point, that makes sense. So now we're going to talk about an entirely new beast, where we're talking about something that actually does change pixel values, and it does that by creating new data. And basically, data transformations at the end of the day are just math. And there are hundreds of different data transformations with varying levels of complexity, many of which their interpretation can get a little complicated and the math is really confusing. So what I want to do in this video series is I want to just talk about two sort of easy to understand basic data transformations. And that's going to be the idea of band ratios and indices. And band ratios and indices are really similar. In fact, indices are just a more complex version of a band ratio. But the math is still easy to wrap your head around. And especially with indices, the interpretations are pretty straightforward. So let's talk about band ratios. A band ratio is just division of one band by another. And indices are more complicated. Math involving one or more bands. Now the key part here, usually with a specific purpose in mind. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about an example of a band ratio, because again, band ratios are basically just division and there's nothing special inherently about one band ratio versus another. But then I want to talk about a couple of examples of indices, because again, they usually have a specific purpose in mind, which means they also usually have a specific interpretation or a specific result that you had hoped to see. So again, this video is just meant to introduce the idea of these concepts, and we're going to go through examples in the next couple of videos. So if any of this doesn't make sense, I encourage you to please reach out. Thank you.